in this painting. Yep. So those questions, the whole what's going on during the Renaissance, what does this look like, what is it about, questions on your packet, while I'm talking, you should be kind of filling those out. After the article, there's not a slide that spells everything out for you. You gotta listen. Okay. First off, Renaissance. What do we know? What does it stand for? Rebirth. Rebirth of what? Art. And? Everything, including math and science and religion and art. It is this flourishing time period where everybody is living and learning. And that includes art. Not just in the sense of that they're creating art, they are, but also in the sense that math and science is included. We have linear perspective. This isn't a fantastic example of it, but we do see she is in front of this window, and we see the top of the ledge, and we see how the columns, that side view of the columns, a linear perspective, the same thing that we did with our rooms, all mathematical. We have atmospheric perspective. Who's been to the Vista House?
It's Crown Point.
Yes, Crown Point.
Oh, everybody said.
Yes, sorry, Crown Point. The house there is called the Vista House. Some days you notice that some days you can see really, really far, and some days you can't see nearly as far because it's hazy. That haze is the atmosphere. Lewis, would you go sit at orange table, please? Okay. Thank you. There are particles in the atmosphere, particles that keep us alive. Some particles that aren't that good, but we'll concentrate on the good ones. We see those particles. Just like some rivers are really murky and you can't see the bottom of it, while some are really clear and you can see all the way to the ground. The air is the same way. If there's a lot of air around us and wherever we're looking at, it has this haze to it. So we see, and that is called atmospheric perspective. As things go back in space, we see that haze, that bluish tint to everything. This gives depth. It makes it look like it's really far back. Our paintings begin to look like windows into something rather than flat pieces of paper. We still have realism coming from our Greeks. We are an intelligent society that likes math and science, therefore we want realistic paintings. But we still have this symbology that we had in the Byzantine era, because frankly, she didn't have an actual unicorn that she was holding on to. Nor, if there were unicorns, do I think that they would be that small, considering they're a horse. The unicorn is there to symbolize purity. This would have been an image, it would have been a gift to her future husband. What? I think that's something on the picture. I don't think she's actually crying.
Why is the unicorn dead?
It's not dead!
What's wrong with it?
It's fine!
It's dead. It literally is
It's
dead.
just a gray, cute little unicorn. Leave them alone.
He doesn't have eyes.
No.
They're just dark.
Why is unicorn eyes dark? Shouldn't they be light? It's like falling.
Lewis are judgy.
She's scared to hold it.
Now, I do also know that in this image, she doesn't have shoulders.
Yeah, that's true.
Her neck just like is wider. But remember, we are artists. We get to choose. We get to choose our paintings, so they're trying to make her look more petite, more elegant with these soft curves. Things that are more angular or more masculine. Have we seen portraits of regular people as of yet?
Yeah.
Who?
No. Trump.
This lady's normal.
Yep.
You're making
Anybody else?
Mona Lisa.
Mona Lisa? But with Greek and Byzantine, it was religion or athletes, right? The church gets a lot of money donated to it, so they could commission artists. And they want to inspire people to the religion, so art is a good way to do that. The Greeks were a very proud nation that wanted to show their gods and goddesses and athletes and warriors, all those good things. So they had a lot of things commissioned. But it's mainly lords, ladies, kings, queens in the church until the Renaissance. The Renaissance is also famous for its trade routes. We have more boats going places, we've traveled further, and we are trading more and more. Which brings us to a merchant class. Before this, we pretty much have the nobility and the poor. There is no middle. This is the first time in history we are going to have a middle class. So because we have merchants with money, they can afford to commission artwork. They can go to an artist and say, paint a picture of my daughter. Because they have the money to do that. So we're going to start seeing more different subject matters. In this, we have Christianity, we have Greek stuff, and we have portraiture. Before, we've had just religion and athletes. We haven't had anything else. So we're going to see more subject matter in Renaissance than we've seen before. We have gone through, since the Byzantine era, we've gone through the Catholic Reformation, where the church kind of had a little bit of a tough spot there. And they are trying to get back on board. They are commissioning artworks, but they've lost a lot of their power. And we have the merchant class coming up and saying that, hey, we want pictures of Greek mythology. We want pictures of ourselves. And they sometimes want pictures of religious stuff too. Greek mythology. This is the birth of Venus. Venus is the Roman version of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. She was born out of a shell in the ocean and blown to shore by these characters. So while it is the Greek body type, she's kind of chubby like how we talked about, and she has the contrapposto pose that the Greeks are well known for. She's also conveniently has her hands placed in places, because at this time with the church, we're a little bit more modest. And this character is coming to wrap her up. All of this, everything I say is important. Everything. We've seen this one before when we were doing perspective. It's the Last Supper. To give you an idea of how large this painting is, this was a doorway, or is a doorway, that they cut into the painting.
That's small.
No, the painting is giant. Yes, because that's a regular sized doorway. This painting is a fresco. F-R-E-S-C-O. Fresco. And have you guys ever plastered a wall? There's that white putty stuff that you make walls out of. They mix that white goop with paint, and then they would apply that to the wall. Meaning that this is not simply paint on a wall, but the painting is actually the wall. Because it is the mudding, the plaster that is made, that the wall is made of. So it's not simply on the wall, it is the wall. And with this, their paintings lasted a lot longer. They didn't flake off like they did with the Greeks, how those paintings were falling apart. This one is now, but it lasted a lot longer than it had in the past. And we see the perspective and the religion and the giant picture and all the other Renaissance things.
So why is it flaking off? Doesn't it break a hole?
It is flaking off just like paint. Well, it lasts longer. It's not immune to time. This is still over 500 years old. Renaissance is 13 to 1600s. So it's 500 years old. It is starting to chip away, but it's lasted a lot longer than regular paint would have. We already saw this tricksy devil. David, from the David and Goliath story from the Bible. So we do have a Christian subject matter. We have Greek influence, the fact that he's naked, the contrapposto pose. But we also have him posing for the camera. He is not in motion, his hair is tousled, and we talked about how his hands and his head are out of proportion, which the Greeks would have hated. His body also does not look like it's on steroids. He's an athlete, but he's not as crazy athletic as the Greeks. Oh, it's people. We have people. This is Jesus getting the keys to the city. Jesus, keys.
Oh, they're Spider-Man.
But they're wearing robes like the Greeks. We have 1 point perspective, all going back to this doorway. We have the horizon line with the atmospheric perspective. We have realism. Sky, yep. All these good Renaissance-y things.
Like, I want to see Waldo up on the roof right there.
Oh, it's babies.
Oh my gosh, fellas, what's the baby's head?
I always feel like this character is John the Baptist.
Yeah. No,
I feel like he looks so demonic in this.
he does. He does his eyes.
The Greeks, the Renaissance loves threes. So we see John the Baptist in a lot of Madonna and child images because we like threes, we like triangles. Even in this picture, these are all groups of 3 people. 3, 3, 3, 3. And even Jesus himself has his hands out, so he makes a triangle. Okay? Here we have a group of 3 making a triangle. They're a little bit less blunt with their religious things. You see the tiny slivers of halos? This is Mary, Jesus, and John the Baptist. What else do we see in this that I've mentioned? A window? What about the window? It has perspective.
Chair. It's a table or a chair?
She's sitting like this.
Is that a table or a chair though?
I don't know. We'll call it a stool.
It looks like a stool.
What about the background?
There's like a castle.
And what happens when it gets further away?
It's small.
Hazy.
Hazy.
We have this elongated, curvy neck. So we have less blunt religion, atmospheric perspective, linear perspective, triangles, realism, drapery. Those are the most obvious Renaissance-y things. And you guys may go ahead. Let's keep cutting it. So we talked about quite a bit of this last week, but this will be a nice review for you. Just a reminder, you should be writing things down in questions 8 and 9 while I talk. Something that influenced the Renaissance was the Greeks. They see the Greeks as the high pinnacle of art. So they try to reproduce a lot of the same style. This is our statue of David. We've seen him before. He has a very similar Greek body type. He's not quite as overfit as the Greeks, but definitely has the emphasis on the human body because he's naked.
Yeah.
He has the archaic smile and he's doing the contrapposto pose where his hips pop. But his hair is tousled. His hands and head are out of proportion. And he's standing there posing as if for you to admire him instead of in motion like our Greeks. So never mind the fact that he is a character from the Bible, meaning he could not be a Greek sculpture. More influence from the Greeks. Adam here looks an awful lot like Apollo, where God looks an awful lot like Zeus or Poseidon. And even how the figure is laying is awfully similar to a lot of our Greek statues. What is this shape? God's floating around it. Does anybody recognize it?
It looks like a heart.
Heart?
Oh, the brain.
Yeah, what kind?
We know from artist journals and sketches that they were studying cadavers, meaning they were cutting up, dissecting dead bodies. Because you can better draw or paint a hand if you understand how a hand works, what lies beneath the skin. This is also why we don't see very many women artists at this time. It was not very seemly for a young lady to be down playing in blood and gore with the cadavers. Therefore, they could not compete with the realism that the male counterparts could produce because they didn't have the same study. We talked about perspective. We know they have linear perspective, where it's that one point on the horizon line where all of the orthogonals meet up. And they could use it in tricksy fashions to create a focal point. And I talked about frescoes last week. Do they remember what it is? It's where they are combining the pigment with plaster and putting that on the wall so that the painting is actually part of the wall instead of merely being painted on the surface. That way the painting holds up a lot longer. And it's also an easier way of doing these really large-scale paintings than if we were just painting it. This is a doorway, and that gives you an idea of how large this painting is.
You fit a door in it.
Not only do we have the invention of frescoes, but we also have the invention of oil paint, where our acrylic paint, our tempera, is made with water. Tempera is actually pigment mixed with egg yolks. That's why it gets smelly. The egg yolk acts as the binding agent, what makes it sticky. We're going to have oil paint. Things made out of water evaporate very easily. They dry up. So it's hard to work with the paint when it dries. When Josiah, where are you going?
I gave him permission to go get a pencil so he can.
Okay, make sure you're talking to me.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Oil doesn't evaporate the same way. So our oil paints are going to not only stay on our canvas wet longer so we can do more interesting techniques, it is also going to have more vibrant colors. These sort of colors. Very vibrant, very eye-catching. We have atmospheric perspective, meaning that we can see the atmosphere, this bluish haze in the distance. We talked about that last week too. Does anybody remember why there's 3 characters in this painting?
No. I don't think we got this far.
Triangles, yes. We love triangles. We love 3. We love 3s. So here we have the top of Mary's head, down to her foot, over to John the Baptist, and back up. Makes a very nice triangle. On this one, even her elbow being out here, makes a very nice triangle.
Also make the triangle.
Who what?
The boys. Or the boys.
Yes.
Or whatever they are.
Yep, right there, a smaller triangle.
Yeah.
Even in this, here's a nicer version of it. The Last Supper. All of these are groups of 3. 3, 3, 3, 3. And even Jesus has his arms splayed so that he makes a triangle. We have realistic people. Our Byzantine era had a lot of those flat, cartoon-like, a lot more realism here. The halos are just barely visible. So this is a lot more about the artwork than about the idea, versus where the Byzantine was about the idea.
Well, it's for babies, but they still look like humans.
That really
Why not?
looks a lot more babyish than our Byzantine artwork did.
That is true.
I'll give it that.
Trade routes. Mentioned this. What was important about the trade routes?
They can bring more art and colors and merchants and stuff.
New merchants? That's the big one. The rise of the merchant class. We no longer have lords and servants, but we also have a middle class, and this middle class can purchase artworks such as mythology, all those Greek stories, portraits of themselves or their family members, religious images. New subjects is the big deal with the trade routes and emerging merchant class. Birth of Venus. Venus is the Roman version of Aphrodite. Born from a seashell in the ocean. We see the Greek influence through A, the story. B, she's having her contrapposto pose, emphasis on the human body. The body type, kind of that chubbiness, all very Greek. We don't have the drapery with as many folds. In this one, it's kind of more puffy clothing. She's a little bit more modest where her hands are than we did during the Greek times. And this is much more vibrant painting than we had in the Greek. It's an oil painting. What do you think changed with the invention of the printing press? What? Made faster. If I told you to write a 5-page paper right now, would you groan at me? Yes. Because that's really long?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if I told you that you had to handwrite, page by page, an entire book?
I would still groan.
Okay, what if I commissioned you? I was paying for you to write the whole book.
I would do it.
How much would you charge?
$1,000.
$100 per page.
A lot of money, right? That's what they had to do before the printing press. Every book was painstakingly written word by word. It takes a long time to do that. Therefore, books were exceedingly expensive. And if you can't buy a book, you don't learn to read because you have nothing to read. Not very many people pre-Renaissance were literate, meaning that they could read. With the invention of the printing press, instead of having to write out each page each time you wanted the book, you would make a carving of the page. And once you have that carving, page done, page done, page done. It depends on how good you are. It's a whole lot faster, cheaper, and easier to make books, meaning books are going to be a heck of a lot cheaper.
We still use a print press today.
There are still printing presses, not many are in use. Because we have just printers. We no longer have to carve out the pieces.
You don't have to carve out the pieces either.
With a printing press you do. Where the lino block is going to be printing, so you kind of get an idea of the process doing that project.
So look, it's not like just carving out words.
We're using rubber, they would have used wood. Make it easier on you.
Oh, Lord.
I know, right? The most popular book at this time was the Bible. I hear it's pretty good. A lot of people like it. It's been popular for that time. Before people were reading reading the Bible, they were just talking to the church. And whatever the church said is what it was. No one else knew any better. But once people start reading the Word of God for themselves, they start questioning the church. They interpret the Bible differently. They're reading the same thing, but they might think, hey, that means something a little bit different than what the church is saying. And that's when we get the Catholic Reformation. The Protestants and the Lutherans become a thing. The church begins to divide. We have lots of divisions with the Christian church today. This is where it starts.
How many?
People, I have no idea. When people start thinking the Bible means different things, different ideas about it, they break away from the normal church and start something new. This again means that the church doesn't have the monopoly, the sole control of the art world that it had before. The church is kind of crumbling a little bit. Which again opens the doorway for more subjects than just religion. There's about 3 different ways that we are doing more subject matter than just religion during the Renaissance. I mentioned portraits. This is a wedding portrait. White dresses were not always a thing for weddings.
Light greens.
Green as well.
Oh,
And any richly dyed material, well, is acceptable. Shows well. Yes.
Wear a purple dress. Why green?
Okay, we're not here to judge her on her color
I'm judging
choice.
her.
I realize how like rare purple is.
This is Jean van Eyck's image. Eyck is spelled E-Y-C-K. We still have lots of symbolism with the fertility, with the dog, the way she's holding her dress. And these are his shoes. I'm sure you can fill in the gap of why they're off and what room they're standing in. I have talked about artists being craftsmen. The fact that they're not important, the painting is important, or the idea behind the painting is important. We haven't had any really famous artists yet. Renaissance will change that. Not only do these artists have to be skilled craftsmen, they have to know mythology. To paint the birth of Venus, you have to know the story behind her being born, all the Greek history of their styling that's really popular at the time. There's religious matter that they have to know. All of these things. So artists are not just craftsmen, but they're also intellectuals. This gives them more credibility in society, and we're going to see artists start signing their work. Now, Jean van Eyck, he's a bit of a smarty. He not only signs his work, but he includes himself in the painting. Because if we look back at this thing hanging on the wall, it's a mirror. This is a close-up of it. He has signed the work in the dead center of the painting. Right there, under the chandelier. And he has included the back of the couple and himself painting the picture in the mirror.
Oh, that's weird.
Trick.
Did you just say Trixie?
I know, right? The smallest breath. This painting's only this big.
What?
Should have a magnifying glass.
No, it's only like one person.
The ambassadors. This painting we actually don't know a lot about. We get a lot of information about paintings from the artist journals or the owners themselves if it's stayed in one family for a long time. This painting is about 6 feet tall. We assume it's about some ambassadors visiting London based off of the telescope he's holding, the navigation tools in here, the globes, the maps, and we are thinking that they were discussing trade routes because of the books and other materials lying about. First off, what is this?
What is that?
This is a close-up.
Well, it's a statue.
It is a statue of Jesus on the cross. Hanging out behind the curtain. That's normal.
Very normal.
Exactly. No big deal.
That's true.
It's a very religious time. So this is the painting in the National Gallery of London, and you can notice, if you look closely, that this section of the wall that the painting is hanging on protrudes, it sticks out. And there is a specific reason for that. I need to turn this down, otherwise we're going to get this.
There's a
What?
Is that looks 3D?
Whoa.
I'm going to play it again. Okay, so this odd-shaped disc that's here for I don't know what reason, if you walk over to this area, to the side of the painting, kind of like how I am to the wall right now, and looked at it, you have to be kind of tall to get it. This is all based off of rules of perspective.
Oh, it's just a stretch school, I see.
They figured out 3D. It looks like it's popping out of the painting.
Who does?
It's a skull. It's just